कि religion को define करना है, there are specific laws and orders जो आप religion के लिए कर सकते हो, but धर्म को आप define नहीं कर पाते.
You can't define it. It's because how can you define something which changes by circumstance? Our modern education system only teaches you skills. So you are very skilled in that, but you don't have a value system. That's not part of your education. And I'm not talking about religion.
But is value system going to be rewarded? You would say or you would argue कि धर्म इसके हिसाब से जियोगे तो value system will be awarded eventually. How do we trust this fact कि it will be rewarded? ये धर्म, how do you define this dharma? Because you said an important point during your response कि you got to be intelligent enough. धर्म सीखना होता है, ऐसा नहीं होगा कि there are 10 people and everybody is dharmic. You cannot learn, you have to perhaps train yourself. How do you understand what is dharma and not?
So dharma is one of the most difficult concepts to wrap your head around. Very difficult, which is why it is so admirable. Sri Rama he's called Maryada Purushottam because he stayed within the boundaries of dharma. So when you say stayed within Maryada, it's not within the boundaries of rules. It's within the boundaries of dharma, which means he knew which dharma to drop and which dharma to adopt at any point of time, which is very hard to do. And I'll give you an example from the Mahabharata. It's an interesting example because the Mahabharata is also about both Ramayana and Mahabharata. Their purpose is to teach people dharma. That's the only purpose with which they were composed.
Okay.
To disseminate the concept of dharma, because it's not something that you can explain. You have to depict it. See, you asked me that question and I don't have an answer for you because it's not something, in fact, it's interesting, I'm writing a book right now and the whole book is about explaining the concept of dharma. And you cannot explain it by just calling it righteousness or duty.
That's perhaps the convenience of defining religion and not dharma.
Yes.
कि religion को define करना है, there are specific laws and orders जो आप religion के लिए कर सकते हो, but धर्म को आप define नहीं कर पा रहे.
You can't define it. It's because how can you define something which changes by circumstance? See, in one circumstance, telling the truth is dharma. In another circumstance, telling a lie is dharma.
But how does a guru then teach a student or a disciple कि कौन सी चीज़ धार्मिक है, कौन सी चीज़ नहीं है, कौन सी धर्म के हिसाब से कौन सी नहीं है, क्योंकि आपकी like you said morality, value systems,
right,
and what is right or wrong may change with time.
Yeah.
But you're also saying but dharma doesn't change.
Right.
So how does a guru end up teaching, or what are the broad confines? क्योंकि आपने यहाँ पे define किया, you're telling me कि भगवान श्री राम ये बोलते हैं कि वो मर्यादा पुरुषोत्तम है, कि वो he stayed in the confines of dharma.
Within the confines of dharma.
So how do you define those confines? How do you teach those confines?
Okay.
What is dharma then?
So there are certain qualities that are associated with dharma. So we consider the bull, Nandi, the bull standing on 4 legs is 4 aspects of dharma. So you can say one leg is satyam, which is truth. Truth is dharma, right? Then you can say that tapas is dharma. That's also dharma. Then you can say that
what is tapas?
Tapas is, it's translated as austerity, but Sanskrit words are very hard to translate into English. So I would say tapas is when you give of yourself. Tapa means heat. So when you do something that is hard, that is difficult, where you give of yourself, you could call that tapas. That's actually a better explanation than austerity.
Sacrifice.
Yeah,
self-sacrifice.
Self-giving. I'm struggling to explain it because it's, English is it's a very difficult language to translate Sanskrit into, because it doesn't have the depth. Honestly.
It does not have the depth. Definitely
doesn't have the depth. It's better in Hindi.
It's very convenient and it lacks linguistic structures.
Exactly.
There's even alphabets for that matter. So English is a convenient language within that matter.
And we use it, and I'm speaking in English.
We are. But
the fact is
we would have been speaking Portuguese if it was for the Portuguese, right?
But
so we are safe that way. Perhaps.
Sanskrit actually, and I've started studying Sanskrit. I started studying it for 4
You
years.
used Gita Press.
I used Gita Press,
Valmiki's
yes.
Ramayana.
And you know why I did that? Because it has the Sanskrit and the English.
Okay.
I did not want to rely only on English translations.
Yes.
I wanted to look at the verses in Sanskrit because it's very different. You know, when you look at Sanskrit is incredibly difficult to translate, especially into English, because a lot of the concepts are not there, they're not translatable. A lot of concepts, like dharma, for instance.
Dharma, for example,
That word
convenience,
itself
dharma is religion for them.
It can be religion, you translate it as duty, you can translate it as righteousness. None of them actually explain dharma. Because dharma, what it is the this is what I would explain it as. It's the right thing to do with the general good in mind in those circumstances. So there are 3 aspects to it. One is it's the right thing to do. 2 is it has to be in that circumstance. And the third is it should be for the general good and not just for your personal good. If you're doing something for your own welfare, right, and not for others' welfare, it's not dharma. It cannot be dharma. Dharma has to be something that you do beyond yourself. That tapas has to be there. That tapasya bhava, which is why the Ramayana starts with that. Tapasvadhaya niratam, tapasvi vak vedamvaram, naradam paripaprachya, valmikir munipungavam. So it starts with tapas. That's the first word. And why? Because the whole thing is about that, self-sacrifice. Which is what Sri Rama, what he stood for, was dharma, and which comes from self-sacrifice.
Okay.
Yeah. So the 4 legs, just to tell you of dharma, is satyam, which you know, that's a Hindi word. Tapas, which is self-sacrifice, heat basically, which you give to yourself. Saucha, which is purity. Saucha is cleanliness, but more in the sense of purity, purity of mind, purity of intent. And the last one is daya, so compassion. So anything that you do, if it has these 4 elements, it's likely dharma, but not for your own benefit. It should be with the general good in mind. If your own benefit is there, fine. But it should not be selfish. It should be unselfish.
It should not be your primary motivation.
It should not be your primary motive. If that is giving this example again, and dharma is not only for something that you do separate, it's part of your life. It's something you do at every moment. Every moment in the morning you think, is this the right thing to do? Is this the right thing to do, or is that the right thing to do? You're choosing between dharma and maybe not adharma, but dharma and not following dharma at every minute. Like as a student, it is dharma to study and do well. That is your job. It is not your dharma at that point of life to be, partying. In your grihast, it's your responsibility to look after your family. It's your responsibility to earn a living. So, in our Shastras, they never look down on Artha and Kama. Artha and Kama, which is prosperity and desire, these are essential human goals that come under Purusharth. So, there's Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. So, basically the Artha and the Kama are between 2 bookends of Dharma and Moksha. So basically it's fine. You want to earn a living, you want to do well, you should be prosperous. You should ask, Lakshmi should come to your house, but not a Lakshmi.
No, but you stay between those confines.
But you stay within the kinds of dharma. So if you run a business, you run a good business where you're dharmic in your daily functions. You're not bad to either your employees or to your customers, right? You're running a dharmic business. That's great. Nothing wrong with that. You're not expected to be in poverty. You see? In fact, the whole society runs only because of the grihast varna.
Which is why I think all of it becomes so special, because it can change very well with the circumstances, situations, geographies, stage of life that he or she may find himself or herself in.
Yes. So dharma is very, it's not
Malleable.
a static, it's not a static principle. So that's why I can't explain to you what is dharma. I have to, if I have to show you what is dharma. I cannot explain it. I'm not saying me, I mean as a guru, you asked me, a guru can only demonstrate it in various, by showing you, which is why the whole Ramayana was composed to show you dharma. You cannot explain it, but through his life, through his actions, you see how you understand what is dharma. And then, not to follow him exactly, but to use that in your life.
And understand what suits
When,
you.
yes, and when you should do what. So I'll give you an example I was telling you from the Mahabharata. That example is actually, Mahabharata has more examples of dharma and adharma than Ramayana has. Because also it was in Dwapara Yuga.
The debate is more vivid in Mahabharata of dharma and adharma.
It's also in a different yuga. See, this was a better yuga in terms of dharma was at 75%. That bull, Nandi, was standing on 3 legs, at least he had 3 legs. Satyug mein he had 4 legs. That means all those 4 that I told you were components of dharma were at 100% in Satyug. In Treta Yuga, at this time, it became 75%. In Dwapara Yuga, it was 50%. And in Kali Yuga, it is only 25% of dharma is left. That poor bull is standing on 1 leg, limping. Not on limping, tottering. Tottering on 1 leg. So, you know, in Dwapara...
So, which is why debates were more, vivid in Mahabharata.
That's why you can see the contrast between dharma and adharma more in Mahabharata than in Ramayana. It was a more dharmic time, the Treta Yuga. So in the coming back to in the Mahabharata, a very good example of how a good person can sometimes not practice dharma unknowingly. So you take Bhishma Pitama, such an upright person, such a stellar human being, right, in every way.
Yeah.
Now, at the Vastraharan scene, you know, when Draupadi is brought in, that terrible, terrible deed is done, right? He could have stopped it. He had the presence. He was the elder in the family. He could have stopped the whole thing, right? But he didn't. He didn't, right? In his presence, it's shocking that something like that happened. And the reason he didn't is because, if you remember, he had made a promise when his father wanted to marry Satyavati. And Satyavati's father, who was the fisherman chief, he said, you can only marry my daughter if her line rules. I don't want your line, any other line to come. It must be my daughter's line that should rule after you. So Shantanu says, he says, but I've already, crowned Devavrata, was his name, not Bhishma at that time. I've already crowned him as the Yuvraj. He's already there. How can I? And he was a wonderful person. So then he says, no, I can't marry your daughter then. And he goes. But he's very, very sad. He's really depressed about it. And so when Devavrata, who's Bhishma, when he realizes that his father is sad because he can't marry Satyavati because of him, because he's standing in the way, he goes to that fisherman and he says, please let your daughter marry my father. I will give up my right to being king. And the fisherman says, okay, you may give up your right, but you will have children. And then they will want the kingdom. They'll say, hamara bhi hak hai isme. How can you do this? So then he says, okay, I take a vow from now that I will not ever father children. From this day forward, I will be brahmacharya, he says, which he does. And he says, I will always stand by the throne of Hastinapura. I will never go against the throne of Hastinapura. So now he had taken this promise. Now this time, this whole scene is happening. He should have broken that promise and gone against the throne of Hastinapura. Dharma says that he should have done that. But there were 2 dharmas here. One was the dharma of protecting Draupadi. The other was the dharma of his promise. Both were dharmas. It was a dharma sankat, you could say. In this dharma sankat, he chose to uphold his promise. Now, Sri Rama would not have done that, because he was such a dharmagnya. He knew which dharma to drop and which dharma to uphold in the circumstance. So, just to give you an example of how even today, as we think we are doing a dharma, and it can actually be an adharma unknowingly. Unknowingly, we can choose the wrong thing to do. If you're not.
But when you're doing it unknowingly, then?
If you're doing it unknowingly, you're doing it unknowingly, but still doing it. Still doing the wrong thing.
So when you're unknowingly doing it, you don't know what is dharma or dharma, because that question never arises, that debate or that doubt never.
But you still get the phal for it. You see, I'll tell you, this thing happens with Dashrath. When he kills that boy, by mistake, he's out hunting, and he hears the sound of an elephant, what he thinks is an elephant drinking water from its snout. And because he was a Shabda Vedi, he could shoot without seeing the target. Just by sound he could shoot. And he chalaus the barn without thinking. That barn goes and hits this young boy who's a tapasvi. So he hits him and he falls, he's dying. Now when he goes to the father, the boy's father, who's also a rishi, he goes to him and he says, I'm sorry I did this. You know what the father says? Since you have confessed, you will have a lesser punishment. But you will still be punished even though you did it unknowingly. He didn't knowingly kill him.
Right.
But the punishment comes to you even if you do something wrong.
Then the punishment was also a consequence of a shrap, na?
That's why he was given the shrap. He says, okay, you have done this, you've confessed it, you've done it unknowingly. And because you have confessed it to me, you've admitted it. It wasn't a hit and run. Right? If it's a hit and run, then the pap is even more. But this wasn't a hit and run. So in this context, he went and he admitted, he said, I beg your forgiveness, but galti se I killed your son. I don't know what I can do now. The deed is done, but I'm really sorry. He begged their forgiveness. He said, because you've done that, you will have a lesser punishment. Your line will not die out, you will not drop dead right now, but you will have to bear the loss of your son. The same
it was
way
more dramatic than drop dead. It was your head.
Yeah, your head won't burst into a. Yes, exactly. Yeah, he used more dramatic language than I'm using now. But yes,
he did get.
He says that. So that is the thing, that your punishment you will get. So Bhishma Pitama also gets that punishment for that and for the other thing of Amba. So you see, Shikhandi comes and he's killed by Shikhandi. So even though he did it unknowingly, he did get killed. He
suffered the consequences.
He had to suffer.
But then again, now bringing it to the modern context, since we are talking about dharma as much, आज के समय पर, because when nobody is talking about India as a modern democratic polity, we are not talking about India as a land of a rule based on dharma. We are repeatedly saying rule of law and order. When we say that India is a democratic polity and we are ruled by the constitution, it's a supreme law of the land, we're again telling ourselves that no, the land of dharma is perhaps no more land of dharma, is land of law and order. Is that a consequence of this, the yuga that we're living in?
I don't think dharma and law and order are at odds. I don't think they're at odds. If you see even in the Satyameva Jayate, ahimsa parmo dharma, all these things are very much part of our whole system.
But that's a part of our ethos. That is what we are trying to achieve. But are we able to achieve it because of the modern judiciary that we see? As in, I'll give an example. Around 100, close to 200 years ago, when the colonial administration had just taken over, and the panchayat system and our practices, or how law and order, how justice would be served, were being changed. Laws were being codified. It was at that juncture, and this was this phase of transition. I'm talking about 1810, 1811. You'll find many British records and diaries of officers who bring this out very clearly, how people would argue that these are your courts. In your court, everybody gets the same punishment for whatever crime they have committed. Say somebody is a habitual offender of, steals a loaf of bread.
Right.
And then there's somebody who is stealing a loaf of bread because he has to feed, his wife or his child.
Yeah.
There are two different situations here.
Yeah.
Both cannot be served the same punishment.
Yes.
The rule of law and the administration of the judicial system and setup that you are bringing in sees both of them as the same when they are not. Another thing, the punishment will be exactly same for both these people, and which is perhaps not right if one is to argue what is the rule of dharma. So it is at odds. I'd argue कि of course we're trying to imbibe these ethos because they are very much ingrained in our DNA and system. हमारे यहाँ जैसे your book is titled Rama. I come from the land of Haryana. तो हरियाणा के अंदर तो the first salutation is Ram Ram.
Ram Ram, absolutely.
So anybody who thinks so हमारे देश के अंदर हमारी सभ्यता के अंदर भगवान राम हो या धर्म हो वो अलग अलग तरीके से सबके अंदर rooted तो है ही. But the times that we are living in उसके अंदर that is always at cross with law and order. Fine example would be what was happening a couple of days ago, the suicide of I think Atul Subhash. The young man who committed suicide because he was not perhaps getting justice in the courts. And what would he do? So I won't say कि stark contrast है, but they're always in conflict. And धर्म आज के समय पर शायद उतना ज़्यादा voice out नहीं हो पा रहा है. What are your thoughts?
No, you're right in that. It's true that we have, unfortunately, in the modern world, we've moved away from dharma and we've gone more into right and wrong and rules.
Is it because of colonial education or is it because of modern education that we see today? Because शायद अगर गुरुकुल परंपरा चल रही होती या शायद उस तरह के शिक्षक होते, there would have been teachers who would teach these things because
from childhood.
From childhood, because Gurukul parampara is
you teach from childhood.
You moved into the school setup. You cannot get out of there.
Yes.
Through each action, and which is what I've been an academic for some time, and I tell this often to my colleagues and others also, कि you never know what a student might pick from you.
Yes.
It could be the way you speak, the way you talk, the way you carry yourself,
you have
some
to be a
work
role
that
model.
you're doing. So a guru has to be that role model.
Yeah.
And हर समय पर पता नहीं कौन सी बात कोई एक शिष्य आपका सीख जाए आपसे. तो शायद गुरुकुल परंपरा भी नहीं रही. That could perhaps be a reason.
That is a big thing. That is actually a big reason. And what we've done is we've adopted a system which was actually forced on us in a way. The court system and everything. Yeah. Even actually surprisingly, within that court system, it's not entirely black and white because there is like a difference between murder and manslaughter. There is and the punishment is different too. Between murder and manslaughter. So there is some place for mitigating circumstances.
Tabhi perhaps we are living in the yuga that we are. It's still tottering, but it's not.
Yes. So there is some place for that. But it's nowhere close to, say, what we are studying here. This is more like for your, if you say for today, you can't follow that exactly because then you can't go like kill a Bali kind of situation.
Yeah.
That's not acceptable in today's world. But you can in your everyday life follow dharma in your behavior, in your everyday life. Right. And it's amazing how in the this is from actually the Katha Upanishad. It's a beautiful piece, which is where Yamaraj talks to a young boy called Nachiketa. And he tells him the difference between Shreya and Preya. He says, Shreya is what is ultimately beneficial, Preya is what is immediately satisfying. So these are the two. And he says that in life, the right thing to do is to choose Shreya, not Preya. Because you're always at a crossroads. In all your actions, you have a choice between doing the right thing, which is ultimately beneficial, and doing what you feel is comfortable and convenient at that moment. And one of the examples I gave, it's kind of like a silly example, but it's an everyday example. You know that you should be going to the gym in the morning. Okay, you know that. You think, okay, Shreya, it's good for my body. So you set the alarm, 5 a.m. the alarm goes. Now you're thinking, oh my gosh, it's winter, I'm in my razai, do I need to get up? Immediately you hit the button.
A friend here needs to know this.
Immediately you hit that button, you know, like snooze button or off button or whatever to get rid of the alarm. Now in that point, Shreya is to get up and go, right? Ultimately beneficial. But what do we choose 9 times out of 10? Priya, which is what is immediately convenient, the comfort of the razai. So, you know, in life, it's this is just an everyday example. You're constantly choosing. You know, between Shreya and Priya. So that is what it is. In this case, to be a person of Dharma, you should be choosing Shreya over Priya at every point. And it's hard to do.
Of course it's hard to do. Matlab, if it was so simple, अभी तो define करना has been such a challenge.
Yes.
उसको implement करना would be another one.
Very challenging.
But then of course वही तो it could be utopia, but it's something, it's an ideal, but it's worth pursuing. But then, before I jump on, why pursue it?
Why pursue Shreya? Because it's ultimately beneficial. Dharma is ultimately beneficial.
What is ultimately beneficial? या धार्मिक काम क्यों करना? And I'm asking this for, you know, a bunch of young people who want to watch it. At the age of say 19 or 20,
why should you follow Dharma?
You have little imagination about what life could be at 50.
Right.
You're young, you're a very impressionable age.
Yes.
The maximum that you can think is perhaps 6-7 years down the line.
Right.
Or even 10 years down the line. You can't see your, you know, life at 60 or 70. Right? For a 17 or 18 year old, कायदे से धर्म तो उसको भी फॉलो करना है, पर वो धर्म कैसे फॉलो करे जब उसको उस धर्म की परिभाषा भी नहीं पता. He does not know how to define it. He or she does not know what should or should not be done. He or she cannot imagine what could be the consequences. And there is no guru आज के ज़माने में who could perhaps tell her or him what to do and what not to do. And the education system is so fairly systematized now. You'll be studying arts and social sciences, or you'll be studying sciences and engineering, or you'll be studying commerce. None of those, you know, courses
equip you for life, to handle life.
Yeah. So, how does one deal with it?
That is the tragedy of modern life. You see, because in the Gurukul system, as you rightly said, it was a comprehensive education. So you learnt your math and whatever else you had to learn, science or thing, but alongside that, it was a holistic education that taught you Dharma. It was inculcated from childhood, these values, how is this outlook. Our modern education system only teaches you skills. So you are very skilled in that, but you don't have a value system. That's not part of your education. And I'm not talking about religion.
But is value system going to be rewarded? You would say, or you would argue कि धर्म के हिसाब से जियोगे, तो value system will be awarded eventually. How do we trust this fact कि it will be rewarded? Let's say commonly ना कि you know कि कर्म का फल मिलेगा. वो फल मिलेगा कब? वो अगले साल मिलेगा, 4 दिन बाद मिलेगा या 70 साल बाद मिलेगा? And that's a question. It's a common question. It's a common modern question. Convenient answer और a धार्मिक answer would be कि उसकी चिंता भी नहीं करनी.
Right.
क्यों करना है? तुमने अपना काम करना था, अपने काम पे ध्यान दो. But consider from a 18-year-old perspective.
Right. Why should I bother?
Why should I bother?
See, the thing is, because we go through this education system that doesn't equip us with this from childhood.
Even those questions.
Even those questions don't arise. We become very focused, and I'm saying this for myself also. I mean, I'm not a young person, but at one time I was a young person.
Many would argue you still
and
are.
I had the same outlook. I was not interested in all this. I was just, I went to university, I joined, I worked, I got married, I had a family, and I was, you know, that was my life. But you don't realize that there is something beyond that. This is the spiritual aspect. So that spiritual aspect to life is something that that is not inculcated.
You're using the word spiritual very consciously?
Yes, spiritually consciously, not religion.
Not religion.
Not religion.
Dharmic?
No, the spirituality and dharma are very religion is not.
Religion.
See, because you can be of any religion or of no religion. You know, it's
could
fine
still
to
be
be even an atheist. There's no crime in that, so long as you follow dharma. So what the thing is, if you believe it, there are two beliefs, right, systems. One is that you are a higher spirit, which is what our shastras teach us. The Vedic shastras say that you are not the mind and body really. You are the eternal Atman. The Bhagavad Gita, the whole Bhagavad Gita is teaching you that message, that you are the Atman. Now, we are not taught that from our childhood. So we are not living thinking of ourselves as the eternal Atman, we are thinking of ourselves as this body.
Okay.
So when you think of yourself as the body and you live based only based on what pleases the body, then you are actually living at a very animalistic level, according to our shastras. You know, there's a beautiful Subhashita which says that, you know, animals and humans share commonality, like in terms of eating, sleeping, aharam, nidra, then maithunam, which is relationship, male-female relationship, mating. Okay, that and bhayam, which is fear of survival. You know, that is common between humans and animals. So what is it that makes the difference? The ability to live a dharmic life. That's the only thing that makes a difference. Dharma. So you use your intelligence in your action.
And foresee.
And behave based on intelligence and not instinct. See, what has happened sadly is we've become very instinctive.
You're feeding onto instinct.
And what is the instinct? Self-preservation. Self-preservation is a very strong instinct. So whenever we see, you're standing in a line, right? Intelligence, dharma will tell you, wait your turn. Right? Instinct will tell you, let me jump the queue and get to the front. Right? So which one is more prevalent now?
I mean,
so the thing is that the instinct is to get what you can, but we have to consciously put that aside and live at a higher level, live at an intellectual level.
But isn't the only way that system would be successful is when the society essentially lives at that level? Like everybody has to have some set of same standards. Na?
Absolutely.
Because if we cannot have a basic minimum, you know, acceptance amongst all, tab to living in that society
That's
will
why
be...
we are in this yuga. That's why I told you dharma is on one leg tottering. That is the thing. This is we have to go the full cycle, and it will. It'll come. This yuga will be over, then we'll go up and up and up, and then the cycle will repeat. The yuga cycle keeps repeating.
No, the yuga cycle. So we'll go into the time and times of question again. But then first, let me just for our viewers. Where is Priya Arora coming from? What have you done? Where did you start? Why the book on Ramayana? How it happened? Tell us a bit about that.
So as I said, I was like that young person who had no interest in
Where did you study? Where were you born?
I was born in Chennai, actually. I lived there for 5
Aroras are Khatris, no?
No, but that's my husband.
Husband's name. You're in Chennai.
So I was born in Chennai and then moved to Kolkata. I grew up there and then went to Oxford.
Before marriage, what was his name?
Barua.
Barua.
Yes.
So you're a Bengali or Assamese?
So I'm, well, I call myself all Indian because there are influences from everywhere in me. The first language I learned to speak was Tamil.
And not Assamese or Bengali?
No, Tamil.
Oh, okay.
Tamil was my first language. Then after that, I went to Oxford.
Kolkata?
Then I went to Oxford. I did English literature. Then I came back. Then I joined Citibank. Met my husband. He was also there. He was a colleague actually.
Okay.
We got married. Then we moved to the US. And all this is very ordinary. There's nothing special about
this. So Chennai you studied until which standard?
5. Kindergarten.
Then you moved to Kolkata.
Kolkata. So my education was basically there.
Your 11th and 12th
yes,
and you
everything, yeah, was there. Then I went to Oxford.
You did a bachelor's there in English literature.
In English literature. And then we went to, all this is not remarkable. You know, many people have the same kind of similar kind of story.
No, not many people have written a book on Dharma. English literature has a lot of role to play there.
The real milestone in my life happened 12 years ago when I got interested in Vedanta. So Vedanta is the essence.
How did that interest come in?
So the interest came because I have a son with special needs. He's autistic, and that created a lot of havoc in my mind. You know, as a parent, when something happens to your child, it is very difficult to deal with, especially a mother, you know. And I used to get into, I was in a real state of anxiety and not in a good place. And I went to attend a lecture on the Bhagavad Gita in the US, in Berkeley at the Ramakrishna Mission, and that lecture had an impact on me. It didn't change me, I just found it very interesting.
And prior to that, were you interested in religion?
Not interested. Not interested at all.
You were a banker?
I was just like
between the Dharma and Moksha.
Yeah, just not at all. Yeah, just living my life like anybody. Like you said, young people today, not interested in all this. And then I started reading translations, and I found that, you know, in translations you don't really get the proper meaning. So then I said, okay, now to understand this properly, I need to study Sanskrit. So then I started studying Sanskrit. So I joined this online program. There's two very good schools. One is Samskrita Bharati and the other is Vyoma, Sanskrit from home. And so I still do that. And because now it's more than just knowing enough Sanskrit to understand the text, now it's become a journey in itself, because it's such an amazing language, and it's such a tragedy that we as Indians are not fluent in it. I think after studying this, I'm like, oh my gosh, why did I not learn this in my childhood? I should have started at 5.
So many of us are perhaps obsessed ke French seekhein, Spanish
No, you should. Sanskrit is the mother of our mother tongues. Just think. It's your grandmother, and we've completely thrown her out. You know?
There's something you've written in the book also. No? You've quoted somebody who's, you know, traveled to the US, some European. I think Voltaire wrote something. Voltaire perhaps.
No, William Jones, I think. Was it William Jones who said that?
No, Voltaire said that jitna bhi sab kuch le.
That is about, you know, the kind of learning and the gyan that there was in this land. You know, actually knowledge went from here out.
Yeah, so exactly that is what he
all the knowledge
says.
went from here. I mean, we had it all. If you look back at our Shastras, it is like a treasure trove of knowledge. And it's, you know, there's this, I saw this actually.
But that's found it. So Voltaire said, I'm convinced everything has come down to us from the banks of the Ganges, astronomy, astrology, metapsychosis, etc. It is very important to note that some 2500 years ago, Pythagoras went from Samos to the Ganges to learn geometry. But he would certainly not have undertaken such a strange journey had the reputation of the Brahmin science not been long established in Europe.
Yeah, that's true. So, you know, we have to be, as Indians, we have everything to be proud of. Not arrogant, but proud. There's a difference, you know. And what happened to me is after I got into studying our Shastras, you know, the Upanishads, the kind of knowledge that there is there, the kind of philosophy, the broad-mindedness of our Shastras is incredible, because it encapsulates the whole world. It's not just for Hindus. That's why I said it's above religion.
Yep.
It's above religion. And we have this knowledge and we don't bother about it. It's like, you know, I saw one post actually on Facebook. It just came up. There's some Romanian woman who had a 7-pound piece of amber.
Okay.
And it's very valuable. But she was using it as a doorstop because she did not know what it was. So she was just, you know, like propping the door open with it. And then it was discovered that, okay, it was worth some millions of dollars or whatever. But it's like that for us. We have this amazing Samskriti and we don't
the Hanuman syndrome.
Yes.
We're all perhaps suffering from it. And I think, and which is why I think, so I'm writing a book called The Modi Disruption. And amongst other things, I'm writing about how since 2014, the biggest change that has come about is that we've sort of become a little more conscious about our whole potential. Before 2014, the maximum that we could think of was some cricket victory, मतलब World Cup जीत जाएं या फिर we have one Sachin Tendulkar, and that one Sachin Tendulkar took, that was the
our
end
achievement.
all of our cultural
Yeah.
zenith,
Yeah.
right? Even in the sporting ecosystem, but if we see the entire soft part, कि वो zenith है. But then it's only post 2014 that we are not satisfied. We want a Neeraj Chopra also. We want a Mukesh also.
Yeah.
We want, and what has happened now is that we are no more imagining that मेरे को अपने गांव के अंदर सबसे इंटेलिजेंट या टॉपर बनना है, या मुझे अपने स्टेट का टॉपर बनना है, सेंटर का टॉपर बनना है, मेरे को इंडिया का टॉपर नहीं, मुझे दुनिया का टॉपर बनना है. So if I want to, and that's a very big change, that sense of confidence that we can do it if we put in the work, and there is nobody who will be able to stop us.
Absolutely.
Our ambitions have become global. वो पहले नहीं था. But then rolling back, so it was because of your child, and how you were feeling anxious and depressed. A lot was going on.
Yeah, and so that lecture spoke to me, because the Bhagavad Gita, that's what it's about. It's about your mindset. So there is no religion in it. In Bhagavad Gita, there's no religion at all. You can study the Bhagavad Gita and be an atheist also. It doesn't matter. Nowhere does Sri Krishna tell you do this puja and do that puja. No. He's telling you about your mindset. What is the winning mindset? And you're talking about young people. The reason you need this spirituality is because difficulties will come in life. Life is full of difficulties, one after another. Maybe when you're very young, you don't feel it so much. But as you go on in life,
because perhaps your parents were taking care of those problems.
Yes, but you will have. There are also, there's health problems, there's financial problems, there's relationship problems, there's umpteen problems, that come. And when those things come, how do you handle them? What is your mindset? You need a winning mindset, because the problems will come whether you like it or not. So you can either face them and win the battle, or you can crumble.
And I think
so that's what it does to you. So what happened with me is I changed my whole outlook. So I used to be depressed because I only saw the problems. Oh, my son is like this, why me, victim, that why me syndrome, which is terrible. It's very debilitating. But when you study our Shastras and then you learn that gratitude, and I said, it didn't happen in one day. It happens very slowly. Automatically your mind changes bit by bit. And then you realize that, in life, in Bhagavad Gita, now I'm going from this to Bhagavad Gita, but, Sri Krishna has a famous thing, karmanye vadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. He says that, right? So that is translated as, you have the right to work, but you don't have the right to the result. And honestly, that's a terrible translation, because it completely misses the point.
What is the point?
The point is, what he's saying is, it's translated like that because adhikar is right in Hindi. I mean, adhikar is right. So, it's a very literal translation which doesn't capture the essence of what he's saying. What he's saying is, you only control your effort, your karma. Karmanye vadhikaraste, which means you have control over your effort. You do not have control over the results. It's not that you don't have the right to the results, but you do not control the results. So, if you are studying for an exam, right, the only thing you control is how much input you put into that study. You can study well, or you can go party every day and study last minute, the last night. That's up to you. You don't control the result, because even if you study very hard, you may not come first. You cannot say, I'm going to study so that I want to come first in the university. You cannot put that as a goal, because you do not control how other people are studying. There may be 10 people who are studying better than you or smarter than you. The only thing you control is how much effort you put in.
So you can perhaps be the best version of yourself.
Be the best version of yourself is what he's saying. He's saying put your focus on the effort. Don't focus on the outcome. So if you're doing a project in the office, say, for whatever, writing a report, don't think, if I write this report, then I'll get a promotion. I'm writing this report so that my boss will be impressed, so that I get a promotion. The moment you start thinking of that, right, you are wasting energy. So what he's saying is, you focus on doing the report as best you can. Put your maximum focus into the report, and then let the result take care of itself.
It adds to a bunch of things, na? Like, whatever you're doing at whatever time of life you are,
be the best version
be the
of
best
yourself.
version. Put your 100% effort in
Exactly.
whatever you're doing.
Yes.
I remember this chat. Back in college, I was telling a classmate of mine that you have to do this assignment. You have to do this assignment, and submit it, say, by the 20th.
Yeah.
Since you are to do it, why not do the best that you can?
Yeah.
Why put in less effort? Why just do if you have to put in those 3 hours,
Yes.
put those 3 hours, put the best of yourself in
Best.
those 3 hours, and you will get the good result. I mean, because generally tragedy is that people are not even putting 60-70% in their assignments also.
Exactly.
So why not do the best? Because
Yes.
if you do your very best, it's going to be better than everybody else's also.
Yes. Yes.
But then how great it would be that everybody raises their standards.
Absolutely.
That your ambition and your achievements could perhaps take
So
a
that
different.
coming back to that, when I said that choose Shreya over Priya,
Long
here
time.
you go. If you put in your best, you're choosing Shreya.
You're choosing Priya, not Priya.
If you are doing it quickly because you have a party to go to, that's Priya, right? Because your responsibility as a student is studies. That should come first.
So
Party
don't procrastinate
second.
that effort. Do that right now and put your best
Exactly.
effort in.
Yeah. So at every point it helps you. And this is especially for young people. I wish I knew this when I was young. I've come to this now in middle age. But if I knew this when I was a young person, so life would have been so much easier. Handle things better.
I've got a lot of young people in my team. One, would freely, I think, would argue instead कि कि वो इतना मेहनत करना ही क्यों है? If I'm happy with what are the life's debates, or what are the objectives? Do you want to be happy? Do you want to be successful? So how about if I just put 70% of that effort? I'm just happy and content with it. What's wrong with that then?
Nothing wrong with it. It's just that you don't get the success eventually. See, because you're underperforming. You don't reach your full potential. In life, if you do that,
so the objective of life is also to reach your maximum potential?
Is to do your best.
Is do your best.
To do your best. You've got this, according to our Shastras, you've got this human body after 8.4 million yonis that you've taken birth in.
Do some justice.
Do some justice to this body. Na?
Right.
And the only difference, as I said, between us and animals, though they are also Brahman, we believe that everything is that same divine Atman. So that, in fact, the Gita says that, Bhagavad Gita says that the Atman is the same, whether it's a Brahmin, a dog, a cow, or even a dog eater. They are equally divine inside, because it's the same supreme reality that manifests as all these forms, right? That's what Vedanta says, that there is only one. There is only one supreme reality.
So
only one power.
One power. So you became a Vedanta student
yes,
through these.
I started studying and listening to lectures, hours and hours of lectures, because Vedanta is not something you can read. You can read it, but you won't get it. You have to listen to lectures.
And I think it's mostly about Indian knowledge systems also, that you've got to have this active energy. There should be a guru who's telling you these things.
You have to be taught. And then you can read.
Then you can read.
Once you've been, so people ask me, what is the best Bhagavad Gita? I said, no, you first listen to lectures. And there are many good lectures. There's Chinmayanand Mission, there's Ramakrishna Mission, there's so many. Arsha Vidya Kulam. There's so many good lectures online that you can listen to. And once you've listened, then you read. Then you find your own meaning from it. But you can't just read and think that, okay, fine, now I got it. Because you won't get it. Because we are not brought up in the Gurukul system. You see? Right. So in the Bhagavad Gita, when Sri Krishna talks to Arjuna, he talks to him, the whole thing is about like 2 hours or under 2 hours. And he gets it. For us, we have to spend hours studying those shlokas.
But that he speaks under 2 hours?
It's about 2 hours if you just I guess, say it.
Okay.
He doesn't have to explain to him. He doesn't have to give him a bhashya. Because he gets it. Because he was
Perhaps
part of the
at the foot
Gurukul.
of the at the foot of
Yeah.
the Guru also.
So he knew these things. What I'm saying is that he understood it differently to how we understand it. We have to be taught it. So he knew exactly what Sri Krishna was saying when he said that,
Well, that makes me think about these remarkable gurus that we have in this country.
Yes.
Who are even in the setup and the system or the tragedy of the system that we are living in, but just carrying forward that tradition of ensuring that the next generation,
Yes.
whoever just find that one disciple who will take these things forward. क्योंकि आज के टाइम पर अगर हम conversation has to be on Rama, but we very much on Dharma for so
but
long.
it's the same, I mean, if you understand this, you'll see him, which is why I wrote the book, because I came from that Vedanta background and I realized everything that that is taught in Vedanta, he is enacting. You actually learn from it, and it's in a way it happens naturally. I'll tell you, this is an interesting thing. I used to be what you would call pure non-veg. Not pure veg, pure non-veg. I used to be.
Okay.
I am married to a vegetarian. But that didn't make me vegetarian. When I got into Vedanta and studying about our Shastras, you won't believe it, my husband never told me not to eat. He doesn't eat, he's very particular, no spoon mixing also. But he never told me not to eat. Automatically, I've dropped it. You won't believe it. Automatically it went when studying our Shastras, because it has an influence on your mind. You're studying about the oneness. You realize that, that we are, that there is the same spirit, and you see animals differently. You think that how can you, I'm digressing a bit now.
But I am happy to digress. My next question will be digressing you further.
But what I'm trying to say is that it becomes the Nididhyasan. So Shravana, you listen to the Shastras which say that, live by the least damage that you can do. So if you're living like in the Arctic, where there's no vegetation, and you eat a seal or a whale, that's not wrong actually, according to our Shastras. They never frown upon it. But if you're living in the Gangetic belt, right, where there's so much to eat, then you are killing animals for your personal, it's not to survive, it's for greed. There's a difference between need and greed. So need, if you're in the Arctic and there's nothing to eat, then you eating that's a different story. To you're living here where there's rice and dal and sabzi and anything you want, and then we're still eating that's greed.
That's greed.
Right? So automatically when you
so
start...
you're doing a dharmic thing when you clearly know that you have many
You're
other
not even
options.
thinking about it. And I'm telling you, when you grow up eating in a non-veg house, it's almost like there's a firewall in your brain that develops between the food you eat and the animal that it was.
Yeah.
You're not connecting the two. So otherwise you can't eat it, obviously. So when you're eating that chicken or whatever, you put it in your mouth, you're not thinking of the chicken. There's that firewall which you doesn't cross. When you study our Shastras, what happens is the firewall starts developing cracks. Usme breach ho jata hai. And then
you realize it's almost criminal, and
don't
because you're not
realize.
doing it for the
You can't
somebody
eat
else to
it.
see.
I cannot put it in my mouth, even though I used to like it. And it's not that, but I just feel that that firewall is broken now. And how did it get broken? Because of Shravanam, Mananam and Nididhyasan. It has become part of my life. Now I'm just giving this example to explain to you how it becomes part of your life.
Since we're talking about Vedanta and Shastras also, and we've briefly touched this earlier during the conversation कि modern context के अंदर how do we see dharma, तो उसके अंदर जैसे आज के 21st century we've got ambitious and fairly successful people like Prime Minister Modi, or we've got Elon Musk, and Prime Minister Modi definitely might show many aspects that make him very dharmic in the sense. But the drivers of 21st century young competition are ambition, greed for more, more money, more fame, more fortune. Does that fall anywhere under the paradigm of the dharmic way of progress and life in general?
So Dharma never says that you shouldn't have ambition, that you shouldn't earn money, that you shouldn't have nice things. The difference, what Dharma says is, don't be owned by that. You can own anything, don't be owned by it.
But does it push you to build things? So there's an advantage of greed and ambition, that you make things, you do great things. And I don't mean by greed that कि आपके पास सिर्फ पैसा हो. There's also this greed for doing something great, making something, making a globally
name.
successfully product, or making an industry which employs, say, 10,000 people. That's an ambition, and that's a good ambition to pursue. But that's also greed, right? Now, I understand that धर्म ये नहीं बोलता कि भाई आपको ऐसा greedy नहीं होना चाहिए या ambitious नहीं होना चाहिए. But are there aspects within that system that would essentially push you to do these things and perhaps aim for aim for that greatness?
You should aim for greatness. You should be. You should try and be. You should be ambitious, but in a dharmic way.
Okay, so
what I'm saying is, there's nothing wrong with that. Is a natural instinct
but
as human beings.
There's an answer perhaps there where we say, okay, of course we'll be great if we are pursuing growth for our own self. If we're becoming the best version of ourselves, of course that happens in multiple aspects, not just कि you're understanding better, understanding your dharma better. You're also perhaps doing जो भी आप काम कर रहे हैं उसके अंदर you're making the best version of yourself through life. And of course if you do that, if you're building something, you'll make the best product, and that will be a natural consequence. But धर्म के पैराडाइम के अंदर इसके अलावा, इस एस्पेक्ट के अलावा क्या कोई और चीज़ है जो आपको पुश करने को फोर्स करती है कि यू डू समथिंग ग्रेट?
So that should be, as you said, doing the best you can at whatever job you're doing. You do the best you can. If you're a business person, you try and run your business for it to be as successful as it should be, and nothing wrong with that. The only thing is, do it ethically.
The natural corollary in that case would be
do it ethically. You don't have to hurt people to be a successful business person. You can be dharmic, and there's this thing when Ratan Tata passed away. He didn't have a single enemy. Everybody, respected him. That was maybe part of his way of doing business, like not unethically. I'm just saying, giving as a modern example. And it doesn't mean, nobody can come close to Sri Ram. Nobody can come. So that is a very high ideal. But even if we can, in a small way, in your everyday, in your thought, word and deed, try and say, am I doing the right thing? When we speak, I'll give you an example of dharma in speaking. I was at a shop in the US. It's a chemist shop. I'd gone to pick up something. There was a person in the line in front of me, and over there they charge you for the bag. To put the stuff. They charge, it's 10 cents, they charge. This guy had told the cashier, he said that he didn't want the bag. She didn't hear him. So she gave him the bag and she charged him for it. He just freaked out. Why? I told you I didn't want the bag. Why did you give me the bag? Itna, poor thing, she was shaking at the end of it. And then he walked off. Then after that, I was next. So she said, do you want a bag? Are you sure you want a bag? So, I was saying that is unnecessary. That is when we speak with Adharma. That was Adharma what he did. Everyday example, there was no need. You can say the same thing. All he needed to have said is, actually I didn't need a bag, can you take it off? She would have done it. But we don't think. We react instinctively as human beings. So if every day, each of us, from the time you wake up in the morning, you think, am I speaking with Dharma? Am I behaving with Dharma? In every interaction. This was an everyday interaction. But that's why I said Dharma is universal, because it doesn't matter which country you're from, which religion you practice. Dharma is a common, it's the religion, you could say it's manavta, it's humanity, it's the principles of humanity.
A lot of life lessons for our audience here.